Hello, this is JD, your VIP coach with HighLevelPerformance.com, and I am super honored and blessed to be your personal and professional coach. You know, I've been doing this now for the last 20 years, and I've had over 25,000 coaching sessions. And I bring a lot of experience, I bring a lot of history out of those 25,000 coaching sessions, helping people with personal transformation, take their business to the next level, create relationships that matter so much to them, realize a spiritual relationship that they hadn't initiated before, take their earning power to the next level, becoming more valuable overall to the relationships that they seek to create and the ones that depend on them, sensing a deeper purpose in their life for what their right livelihood is, what they sense in their deepest knowing, what they need to do with their gifts and their talents. And so you have transacted a coaching relationship. And this is a relationship that as a journey, as a learning journey, is unlike any other relationship that you have ever had. And I think it's important to understand what the anatomy of the coaching relationship is. And that one of the key components of making the relationship useful for you fundamentally is understanding the roadmap, understanding the directionality of the coaching process. And so I'd like to go into that with you. And this is 20 years of experience talking, right? So this is the approach that I have come to. This is the approach to obtaining a total success experience where we bring it all together. Because point A, where we're starting from, is you have a lot of different facets between your business plan, your life plan, your personal vision, and your priority management that can come together. And so what becomes possible? What's a vision of the future state? What's the state of affairs in your environment, in yourself, in the qualities around you, in the relationships around you? What can you expect to see? What can you expect to realize with the work that we do together? And so what I'd like to propose is that we review four things. And these are four zones that our work together is going to measure, is going to track on, dramatically improve, tune up, finesse. And they go something like this. And I'm going to start them very, very simple. I'm going to say four words to you. The first word is to be, is being in the world. The second word is create, creating, bringing something into being that matters. The third word is relate, relate, which means repeated elation, relate. And the fourth word is earning, earning. So I'm going to give you some stand-ins, some synonyms of these words. You know, for being, we're going to call being in life, being alive, consciously living. Some might call it participating in one's life. I hear constantly from entrepreneurs, leaders, from people I coach, JD, if I could just be a little more present. You know, if I could just relax my attention right now in this moment, if I could just be more present, boy, it would make so much of a difference. But I'm so caught up in all the turbulence and the busyness that my mind is somewhere else. I'm caught in my internal world and comparing what I'm doing to something else. I'm caught in my ideals, or I'm in my danger and fears, and I'm trying to prevent the past from reoccurring. Or I'm fixated on controlling the future. I just got to make sure things turn out the way I want them, so I worry and I get anxious about the future. So we all too much get so internal in our own world that we fail to have a direct experience. We fail to have the directness that we can experience the geometry of life. The geometry, the ups, the downs, the ebbs, the flows, the goods, the bads, because life is like a wild card. And one of the things that you learn as you mature as a business person, and just in your whole life as you move from kind of the first part of your life to the second, is that you're in a process of forgetting a lot of things. Forgetting means you're releasing something that is no longer important. But you're also restoring something that you've forgotten. And so there's a great deal of remembering something that you forgot. For example, you forgot how to play as a kid. When you got up when you were young, in your first 10 years, pretty much your one motif when you got up was to play. It was to get up, play with the truck, play with a game, play with people, play with friends. That was pretty much your life. It was pretty cool. Everything else was pretty much taken care of. You didn't have to worry a lot about the future or think about how you were affecting things or how you were going to behave because you had dependents on you or how you were going to be a father to your children or a mother to your kids. But you, without all that responsibility, you were able to access a wonder child inside of you, a sort of a non-worried person that isn't too preoccupied with all the other things going on. Everything was pretty much local to your own domain where you were able to focus on your upbringing. And so one of the things that we've forgotten is how to play into that wild person that we are, to live a little bit more dangerously, for example. Or maybe we have forgotten how to love. Maybe we've forgotten how to keep our hearts open and to tolerate things that maybe are painful or to understand differences in other people. So maybe we need to remember those. Or maybe we need to forget the pain that we've had. Or maybe we need to forget what our tendency to protect ourselves or control ourselves really is. And so I think being is the fundamental part from which everything else gets going, right? We often are so busy doing everything, caught in all of the busyness and the things we're doing. I often wonder, what are we so busy about? That if we stopped and looked and maybe tracked on what we're actually doing, we may find, to our own disillusionment or our own disgust, we don't want to know, because we might have to change something, or we might figure out that the stuff that we're focusing on is pretty minor. It's not major. It's not worth living for. And the reason why you're probably thinking about these things and nodding your head is because you're not the same person that you were before, right? Today, you have a different level of awareness. You're more conscious because of the brevity of life. If you're coming into the second half of life or part 2 of your life, then probably a symptom and a sign of that is that you don't have all the time now. If you're 50 years old, if you're 40, even your late 30s, you're coming to terms with your perceived immortality. I remember sitting across from my grandmother at 89 years old. She was a ordained Baptist minister at 80, very inspiring woman. But she was sitting there at 89 telling me that in the last weeks of her life, she still had music to play in her. She still had work to do. And I thought to myself, as I turned my eyes around and I bend the beam back to me, I thought, I'm never going to die with music left in me. And that part of the work that I must do is to make sure that anybody who has that potential that's bound inside of them, that has the unlived life, that has potential gifts and talents and abilities, and a place where that can belong, where the world can see the opportunity of them, where they can harvest their creative freedom to express all that they dream and create, I have to unleash that. I don't know how not to. And so part of that is bringing you closer to being you. Yeah, being you. So what is that you? What's the you that's being you? Nothing. It's the part of you that doesn't need to be doing or being something. Because pretty much the first part of life is learning how to be somebody. We're working toward being a somebody. We're on the ego-based urge to be somebody. To be special, to be noticeable, to be different, to be valuable, to be earning love, to be powerful, to be somebody. But see, this is the means to a lot of our suffering, because we try to form or portray a somebody that isn't necessarily the body that we are. It's not our true identity. And so we sell it out for the sake of being approved. We sell it out for the sake of acquiring things. We sell it out to belong. We sell it out to keep up with the Joneses. We sell it out to be loved. We sell it out to live up to our ideals. We try to avoid the fear of rejection. And so we try to manage ourselves by having some sort of ideals to hide our unwanted beliefs that we're not enough. And so there's nothing wrong with you. I'm not suggesting that your being is just contaminated and this is toxic and we have to decompress you and we have to take you apart and we have to put you back together because you're such a work in progress. Nah, self-improvement is an act of violence. You'll learn that very quickly from me. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just that you forget, right? You fall asleep. It's like sleepwalking. You forget kind of underneath what's the behind, because it's so easy with all the assaulting on our attention span to get caught in all the doing and forget what it is to just be with the simple things. You've probably noticed this when you take your kids to the park, or you go to the beach one afternoon, or you take a walk and you look at the sunset, or you have a nice warm night just talking to people around the fire, or you make something together in the kitchen. We forget the simplicity, the miraculous simplicities of just being together. And so we substitute that with a lot of consumerism and entertainment to mask our longing for deep connection. And so I think part of the process of bringing you home is to bring us conscious, is to bring us to have a real conversation about your state of being and your way of being, your interior condition. Rather than look for all the external things to offset the internal stuff, why not look interiorly or inside you to look at how you're paying attention, to look at the quality of awareness that you're bringing to the current moment? This matters. It matters to me because of what I know is possible when we shift the internal source of awareness from which we're attending to everything in our life. Does it mean that you put yourself into a silent room and meditate and get locked away for hours? I don't think so. I think a lot of us do that because it's so extremely busy and the world is so loud that we have to force ourselves into an asylum to get away from everything. We have to find solace somewhere. And so we fight and crawl that way. But that's not exactly what it is. What it is the ability to hold space. It's the ability to hold space for life in a consistent flow, a stream of coming and going. That despite your brain wanting everything to look solid, to be predictable, to see the consistencies, we have to come to terms with the impermanence of life. There's no religion or belief system that is backing this at all. There's no agenda in what I'm saying. I'm speaking directly to the nature of life. Nature's laws is that everything must change. Nothing stays the same. You are evolving, everything around you is evolving, everything is in a stage of movement. There's nothing static. So to predict the future isn't something you can do. To say that you know how you know what you know isn't something that is real. Right? Everything that you know is an accumulation of your exposures, of your experience. But as far as your being and being touched by life, inspired by life, being challenged by life, being surprised or astonished or all of that, to be able to receive life on its terms, not on yours, not on control, not on manipulation, but to set the tone for learning that life is an implicit curriculum of ongoing changes that you can constructively learn from. It's Earth School. Yes, it is. And so what I find is that this part is what so often we're thirsting for and hungering for, to get back to reflection, to back up behind all things and think and plan, to evaluate alternatives and think about what really matters to us and organize our choices from there instead of just reacting and responding to what's pending. Because if you do that, then the to-do list masters you. Right? You don't have the bull by the horns. You have the bull by the tail, and you're being wagged around. So you have an alternative, and it comes down to how you influence and how you orient yourself. And so your orientation can change from a reactive orientation to a creative orientation by making a simple, fundamental choice. And that has to do with choosing to become the predominant creative force in your life. Just take that for a moment. Let that sit in you for a minute. What would it mean if I was the predominant creative force in my life? The predominant creative force. So does that mean I take my cues from my circumstances? Well, certainly my circumstances are significant. I mean, I can be real about those circumstances. But that means that I choose to create an alternative future, not because I have a problem, not because I have a certain thing I want to get rid of, not because of any other agenda or reason other than loving that future before I create it. Because I'm a loving being, and out of that loving beingness, I love generatively what the imagination is that I have. I can choose what I envision and bring it into reality. It's called the creative process. It's a process. It's not a process of changing who you are, although you may change a few things in the process of creating, right? You may change your inner state. You may change your awareness. You may change your decisions. You may change your priorities. You may change your habits. You may change all that. But you will be changed by virtue of using the creative process, which is the most extraordinary method in the history of human civilization of creating any idea or goal. We've created civilizations using the creative process. Artists use the creative process. Musicians use the creative process. Entrepreneurs use the creative process. Parents use the creative process of creating relationships with their kids or opportunities for their children. Creating is down to the very nature of who we are. We don't know how not to create. Create is a natural birth of our expression. Out of the love that we are, we take delivery of things that we imagine and create them. It's not a selfish thing because I know that the nature of a lot of creating is very altruistic. I mean, when I ask people about what they want to create, their basic goodness just is so obvious about the things that they want to bring to the world. I'll ask employees what they want to bring to their companies. I'll ask leaders what they want to bring to the market. The things I hear are anatomically very, very good and very, very generous. They don't have to be. But it's not about becoming someone. It's about bringing into being what really matters to you and setting that as the main event for learning how to build capacity towards the creation that you want to create. Now, my guess is that this is very different than the current manner in which you're living. Fundamentally, right? That's why we always start with the fundamentals of being, because being in the world has to do with how you're orienting yourself to life. What terms am I on with life? Am I living in a creative orientation, building creations that matter to me, organizing my life as a creative framework of creating my life-building process, creating? Or am I just reacting and responding, trying to construct a better attitude towards things? You can create a better attitude towards things. You can have positive attitudes, but you may still not create what you want. You can fix things that are wrong with you. You can work on your weaknesses. You can work on your quirks, but you still may not create what matters to you. It's not a question of self-improvement. So we're not talking about human potential. Those are ideals. Those are dogmatic ideas that exist in human potential thinking. We're not talking about that. We're talking about your quality of being in the world, the level of involvement and the level of enjoyment in your life, what I call inten. Involvement to enjoyment. That what we're all hungry for is not a smaller work day or goofing around or getting relaxed or living on an island. I've had clients do that and it drives them crazy because they have nothing to do. We're busy people, but the question is, what are we putting our life spirits into? And this is called creative freedom. And creative freedom is the ability to choose what matters to us and build the infrastructures as a function of creating that so that we can consistently access our creative sources, our design elements out of which we create what we want, but we position and pattern our life-building process from which our orientation to creating gives rise to creative acts. We become the predominant creative force in our life. Now, if you've talked to anybody, if you talk shop to any entrepreneur, leader, any business person that is becoming a serial creator, moving from someone that isn't terribly a creator to really creating things that matter, there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of internal things, and there's a lot of external qualities. The external qualities are, if you look at where you're spending your time, you're probably not spending your time on creating. You're spending your time on reacting. Most of your time is in a reactive mode, and also you're bound to a to-do list majoring in minor things. That's why you're listening to me, is that you want to spend your time on things that matter, that make life worth living, that suck the marrow out of life, as they say in Dead Poets Society. Have a great time, live the adventure, explore new territory, all of that. Pick a destination you want to go to, learn by doing it, all that. And what it does is transcends the use of time. It makes your time a higher quality of time. It brings meaning to the time that you have. It brings pleasure to creating that. It causes you to change how you pay attention. It causes the flexibility of your mind to be present to current reality, to be able to see what's there without editing it. It helps you take your concepts in your head, what you believe, the persevering beliefs, and step back and look at those mental models and instead construct a direct experience with what's going on in relationship to where you want to go. So creating isn't just setting a bunch of goals, or like a painter saying, I want to create this painting, or an artist saying, I want to create art. Now, creating has to do with setting an outcome that we want to create in any area because it matters. And then observing the current reality that we now have in relationship to that and constructing a course of action that causes the current reality to become the same as the vision. That we resolve tension, not worry, not anxiety, but we resolve the difference between the desired state we want and the current reality that we now have. So what does that mean? Well, we all have a certain voice of judgment that causes us to edit life. We think we know what's going on. And we draw upon our database of the past to make sense of things. It's the natural motivation of our brain. But we disturb ourselves, we limit ourselves, and box ourselves in to all or nothing thinking. So we come upon a situation and we interpret the intentions of another person. Or we reuse what we believe and we look through the lens of a worldview. And we make sense of things by looking through that lens, by our own theories. And by virtue of moving through time, our brain, your brain, looks for solid things that we can count on. We want to live in the predictions that what we see will recur and reconfirm the beliefs that we know. What's the problem with that? Well, when it comes to being in an orientation of, I'm going to create out of that being, what we're not doing is really being anywhere. We're just living inside of our own concepts. We're living in our thinking. And out of that thinking, we download certain information that comes from what we know, from what we've experienced, from what we've studied, from what all of the things that we have learned through inferences and observations. We've been able to draw up concepts that cause us to model what we think we see. And sometimes, if it goes on automatic, we think we see it's real, but it's not. It's like projecting slides on the wall, not what's really going on. So you see yourself, you see what you already know, instead of seeing it or seeing the facts. Instead, we construct it as fact in our mind, and sometimes we even shadow box. We'll start fighting against, with self-aggression, ourselves, not knowing that we're sleepwalking. We'll believe everything that we think. And in order for you to be in a direct experience, you can't believe everything that you think, because everything that you think isn't what's going on. So what is the vaccine? What's the antidote? Our quality of awareness actually slows down time. Because we're so busy being busy to do what could make us a lot less busy, the only way to see that is by being aware of that. We see our own seeing. Yes, we learn to suspend our certainties. We suspend our voice of judgment to access the creative freedom of being direct with what's going on. Current reality is an acquired taste because we might not like what's going on, but we can meet it. And as a creator, you learn that capacity to develop a relationship with current reality as an ally. Rather than being freaked out about the present moment, or what it says about us, or take it personal, or put our identity in it, we learn to leave our identity outside and construct a more direct relationship with current reality. What does this do? It mobilizes change. For example, if my spouse says something critical of me, on the one hand, it really hurts because they may not like something I'm doing. And when I hear it, it may go into my model of what I expect of myself, and I start to agonize by comparing myself to my ideals. On the other hand, I might step back far enough to recognize that they have a need here that they're communicating, and the reality is I'm not meeting it. And as much as I want to moan about what I think I should be doing, or how I've let her down, or tell myself a story that I'm now going to abreact out of, I can untangle the knot. I can stay long enough with that situation to unknot my feelings about it, I can back up far enough, look objectively at my belief system at play. I can look at the patterns or the actions that I might take to defend against what I don't want her to think of me, or how I'm going to make her think good of me, or I might over-apologize, or do other things, or take it in my pride, or try to get attention from somewhere else to make up for my sense of being diminished. But instead, I just look at current reality. What's really going on here? And what would be a step in the direction that would move me toward what I want to create? What I want to create, what kind of relationship I want to create. I might go there. So you get the idea. You get that we all have mental models. It's not that we have a model in our mind. It's that we forget we have one. And so we have self-aggression. We aggress on ourselves by not being aware of those models. So that's the opposite of creative freedom. That's like creative blockage, because all we see is reconfirming data of what we already know, instead of holding ourselves to see things directly, objectively. Even ourselves, we can take self-objective views of what we're good at, not good at, where we are in our competency. I had to do that when I learned how to sailboard. I had a vision of how I wanted to be able to sailboard one summer at Malibu Beach. Here I am at First Point, falling in the waves. The coach is yelling at me from the beach. You get the picture? All of my peers, my teen peers, which I have a very sensitive ego, so I'm incredibly insecure. And here I am out there battling my own internal dragons, thinking what a fool I'm looking like. But what I forgot was, in the creative process, we all have to go through a foolish stage. That at everything we learn, even learning language, riding a bike, learning business, learning any skill, we start with a foolish stage. And what keeps us keeping on is our vision. What keeps us keeping on is being able to articulate where we actually are compared to where we want to be. I learned piano that way. That my piano instructor would tell me about how I was currently playing, rather than react to what that said about me, I was able to use that as, well, the honesty was so constructive. It showed me where to change or make strategic adjustments. So I could bring my current level of capacity to the desired vision that I wanted to create. And I was able to bring myself to play more pieces that I enjoyed, and so did other people. I eventually learned how to sailboard, but the whole time I wanted to swim into the beach. I wanted to compromise the goal because the emotional tension was so high, I couldn't hold the space, I couldn't hold the gap. But I did. We all have a certain level of tolerance. We all have a certain level of intestinal fortitude. And I'll assume that all of us could use a really good booster shot in getting more. We just don't know how to hold space for ambiguity. We are creatures of comfort. We love pleasure. We hate pain. And so we don't like some of these thresholds and gateways that we have to go through. We don't like the endurance and the tests and the mental toughness that comes with creating. Creating and constraints go together, right? They are not without each other. You will hit obstacles. When you start doing something, you will hit your voice of judgment. But you'll also hit another inner enemy, your voice of cynicism. And the reason why I know that is that nothing is created by itself. Your voice of cynicism is that quality of disconnection that's in your heart, that's in your emotional body, that says, don't get too intimate, don't get too close, don't expose yourself. This person can hurt you. So we put armor around our heart and we defend ourselves from listening with empathy to others. We try to defend ourselves, protect ourselves from going too far. We slow down relationships out of fear that we'll be taken advantage of. We thwart people and distance ourselves to stop them from gulping us up, from gulping us alive. Or just the opposite, is that we don't think we're worthy of love. We have an underlying construct that we are invisible, and so we don't know how to set boundaries, and we let other people take advantage of us. But you get the idea that we all have some voice of cynicism, and we need this to some degree because, well, people can hurt us, and there are bad people out there. But when it comes to creating something, when it comes to leading a team, building a unified team, and cultivating qualities of respect and trust and shared vision and shared understanding and common caring and bonding, we have to really look at the interior condition of our own hearts. That if all we're doing is trying to keep people out, isolate them, all we're doing is we're cutting ourselves off from the social body, the collective leadership, the collective creative commons that we depend on to bring creations into our life. You're not a soloist. You're not a one-man band. And if you think you're going to carry the whole thing on your back up the hill, that's stupid. That's rugged individualism. That is betrayal to yourself. That's the martyr talking. You don't need to put yourself into that kind of suffering for protection. Instead, what if we started to assume that the world was friendly again? Yes, there are good people out there. Yes, people are very, very good. But the reason why they don't appear to be is that they're doing the same thing you are. Is they're trying to wonder if other things are worth trusting. So you're both thinking about the same thing and nobody really knows what anybody is doing. It's such a cosmic joke because they're worried about what you're doing, you're worried about what they're doing, and then it creates cross-cancellation. The circularity is we never get that intimacy, we never get that living social trust out of which great creations come. So learning how to suspend our voice of cynicism, to access our ability to listen, honor differences. So by having an open mind and suspending our voice of judgment, we get access to insight. We can see what reality presents us at every moment and gives us insights. And we take those insights and we can integrate them. And then we have epiphanies or aha moments. And then we have these differences, right? Is that we see things that are different. We see qualities in other people. We find ourselves, without cynicism, able to conserve our legitimacy, conserve their legitimacy, to be human. So being human is to allow the other to be a significant other, to be a legitimate other, including yourself. Compassion and understanding. To carry more of a third-person orientation rather than first. We learn how to depend on our empathic listening, to hold space for the other, without needing to change them, to contort them, to fit them into something for us. I remember someone saying to a family member just recently, I don't want to change you. I want you to be just as you are. I don't want to make you for me. I want you to be just as you are. And what's really interesting is that when they let the other person, when they stopped resisting the way they were, the other person came around and made some pretty significant choices. They started to change in a very favorable way. Or the father who's on the son or the daughter to pick up their room and suddenly lets hands off. I'll stop doing that. Stop trying to get them to do something. And suddenly they do. Suddenly they just do it on their own accord. They choose to rather than do it for you. So there's a quality of relating here that I'm talking about that unleashes a source, a design element of creating out of the open heart. And that if we open that organ of perception widely, we're able to access inspiration. We're able to access the way people affect us, the way people bring us into the love that we are. When you say I love you to someone, you're saying thank you for bringing me back into the love that I am. You're granting them power. You're confessing your dependence. Even if it's unearned kindness, you have mercy in you. You have compassion and understanding. Those are things that are in your nature, that kind of kindness. And that when you dwell or reside in those qualities, you probably sense a greater sense of fulfillment in yourself. You have a sense of contentment and a gratefulness for just the simplest things, for the way people are, or you'll notice something about them that you didn't see before. Or you're able to be where they really are rather than where you want them to be. You've probably noticed this as a parent. I noticed it when my little daughter Hannah, at 10 years old, we were talking about a bedtime story one night, and she said, Daddy, there's a purple dragon in the closet. What? A purple dragon in the closet? Now, of course, imagine me, my first person, being someone who's in adult education, knowing so much. The first part of me, my identity of knowing, my expertise would say, oh, please, stop. But I bit my tongue. And I decided to go into her world. And instead of me telling her that she was wrong, I decided to stay where she was. And then a question started to surface. Well, tell me about him. What does he want? And she said, Daddy, he's hungry. I said, really? What does he want to eat? He wants some cookies. Okay, you want to go to the fridge? We'll get him something and some milk? Yes. And there we were walking, and I was arguing with every step with the internal battlefront between my voice of judgment and my voice of cynicism going, oh my gosh, I'm empathizing with her, but I'm like connecting, disconnecting. I'm going online, offline, like an internet connection, I'm tuned into her, I'm tuned out of her. I'm tuned in, tuned out, tuned in, tuned out. And I found myself winning that struggle, that the more I was with her, the more I really felt a quality in myself of just giving it away, of stepping outside my own boundary and being in her world. And I felt a profoundness in myself, something that was so vital and so available and vacant that I wanted more of it. And I loved being there without having to turn her in any way or manipulate or dominate. I just could be with whatever was happening. I can't describe the feeling. I remember what it felt like inside me, but it felt so fluent and felt flexible that I could live through it, that I could survive that moment without having to change the conversation or be contradictory or argue or try to say what I thought was right or get my voice heard, but instead just be ordinary. I didn't have to be somebody in that moment. I didn't have to go back to being the guy who knew. I could just be ordinary and just listen and tune in to where she was. And so we came back, we brought him the food, and every night we continued to talk about Elmer the dragon, and eventually it emerged into his 3 wishes, and it turned into an entire narrative and story that we could parallel to some of her own evolution and identity. It was beautiful, and we were both changed. It was a transcendent experience that she felt respect and acceptance, that I didn't reduce her out of my voice of judgment, and she didn't reduce me into what I knew, that we could find a meeting place, emerge in the conversation where she could be in her world and I could be in her world, and I could survive that, and I could have the integrity to stay there. And it was such a delightful way of bringing me out, a delightful way of coming to my own wisdom through that exchange, that experience of myself of kind of losing and finding something, that I don't think I had ever gotten that close to my truth, that I was okay to be with nothing, with not having any agenda, with not having to impress, with not having to teach her, with not having to fear that she might get too illusory in the Santa Clausness of it all. Oh my goodness, what would I do? Instead of that, hands off, I just stayed in the vulnerable space of curiosity and just stayed with a fresh mind as if I had heard it for the first time. And I had to make some effort to do that, but it was just a conscious effort to just let go. And what started to come was an entire story started to open up, where we opened up a creative set of cool ideas and imaginary things. And then we added other characters to the whole scene. And then eventually it just became a story that we could come back to every night, where these characters that would interact with Elmer had these qualities that almost in a way represented her and things that were going on in her life. So it's a fascinating piece when you move out of that cynicism. And then I found myself encountering the voice of fear. That in there, I was so fearful that what would she think of me if I agreed with her? Or I was fearing that I might not control my child and her, all those voices. We experience those inner enemies when we come to life, when we meet moments or we try to do something. Our voice of judgment, our voice of cynicism, and our voice of fear are along the way. And those interior pieces, we find our way into opening those, into our open mind, our open heart, and even our open will to be changed by the whole. I found myself encountering something much larger than myself in the space with Hannah, my daughter. And that quality was coming back into me and kind of bending the beam of itself. I was kind of toggling between a social sort of dynamic that was happening, a containerization that was happening between us, where we were forfeiting kind of our identities into a flow. And that flow was toggling back and forth between each of us in the space itself. It's an amazing thing to be so available and vacant, to be so open for receptions like that, that whatever arises doesn't require me to be in the familiarity of it. It's a conversation of its own. And it has an authenticity that's there that isn't necessarily having to be mine. It's a possession of me rather than me possessing it. I think it's kind of like the music playing the band, right? You see a jazz trio and they often wonder where the origins of the music came from, but by the wholeness of the group, we start to encounter the animation, the individual animation of the music in each player. Basketball teams, Bill Russell used to talk about this in the Celtics, where each player is animated by a certain collective field that he said almost felt mysterious, where we just knew what to do or knew where to be, almost in suspended animation, where we're coordinating as if time were to slow down. Or you'll see people do that when they get to a crisis or accident, that someone is perishing or there's a car accident, and the human beings that come together in the crisis point, they all kind of know what to do. The walls drop, and they're all terribly reverent to what's going on with the other, that this common care is like a choral soul that kind of comes out into making a grand array. Every part of the array knows where to be, kind of knows what to do. They don't have any kind of previous technical learning. Some of them do, some of them don't. But they really have this knowing that surfaces that dominates every other part of their animation. And their comprehension levels are at a completely different space. Their emotional comprehension is there. There's a level of intel. There's an intellectual comprehension that's there, that's also coming forth. But I think there's also something about an ontological intelligence that when we're really being, our quality of being in the space itself is informed by something living there, that there are flow patterns of energy and information that are not yet apparent, that are emergent and unfolding. And if we can just open ourselves and turn toward those potentialities where we have a sea of potential that can kind of reach us, get a hold of us, whatever we're supposed to be doing stands in need of us. And that if we learn from the future as it emerges, we can have some pretty interesting integrations between what we sense is coming, set foot into that territory, and kind of become that as it's emerging. It's a very different way of learning, isn't it? It's learning from the future rather than learning from the past. And if we can get our quality of being so aware that we are so surrendered and receptive and so open that we can be wired for sound as to whatever wants to emerge, and if we can start to name it and begin to bring it into full form, then we become a vessel for the creative act. We kind of get out of the way of what it is, the destiny is that stands in need of us, and we are summoned by it, and we sense what is called upon here, and we kind of find our place to take in it. And I think every leader that I have talked to in some way, either in the distance or close and near, have been called into something in their own sort of right livelihood, that at the centerpiece of the cause, to get through the obstacles and the barriers, they have submitted themselves to something that they do not know will work out, something that they do not know will bear fruit, but they persevere because they're assigned to it, and it's not an obsession, but it's a sacred project, something they must do. It's not passion, it's not hunger, it's something greater, ontologically, that's lodged in their being, that has to be done. And maybe it's something written on their tabloid on their life entry. Maybe it's something on their scribe of their life. Maybe it's stained on their soul. They must do this. But they sense something deeply. It's a whisper. It becomes a clanging hammer. It's speaking to their DNA. It animates their being, and out of which their intention is set. And that when they set that intention, it's full tilt, man. It's full throttle. It's embodied. They can't not do it. They absolutely must do it. There is no decision to make. They have to. There's no option. It's that have to quality of firm persuasion, standing in the presence of all you are, that your convictions are there. You must do this. You don't know anything but this. And as you submit yourself that way, unforeseen forces arise. They come to your aid because you're taking meaningful leaps into uncertainty. It is faith in action. It is the submission of yourself. And it is that grand will that you allow to take over, to enter you, to enter your wisdom and your basic goodness, to channel that and to organize action around that. That is the wisest care for all things, and the basic goodness and the desire to serve, soul service, to find meaning in the course of action, to give value for just the joy of it. That's what I'm talking about. There is no greater place to operate from than that. It is leadership as the finest quality of expression that you can access at any moment. That is internal creative freedom, folks. And that internal creative freedom is transformative. And so my role as coach is to melt any barrier between you and being free. Being free internally to wish, to dream, to serve, to bring forth what has meaning for you, develop a vocabulary for it, create a language around it, and then with everything I've got in fellowship and support, use my way of being to open the lid and to help you find your place where you're born to run, and that's you. And that's the creative freedom internal. Now, the creative freedom external has to do with relationships. It has to do with a personal gift that you have, and it has to do with, it has to do with a very creative conversation with the world, with others. And so I'd like to say that externalizing quality is whatever it is that's outbound is going to inspire you inbound. It's going to the places that inspire you, that take you. Sometimes it's going somewhere else. Sometimes it's getting a sense of something, and then you have that quantum moment where you get, oh my gosh, I see something, I have an epiphany. But I think also creative freedom has to do with your support network. That in order for you to continuously access the time, the space, to continue to make more space, you need to be able to free yourself up of responsibility, to be able to take a lot of the activities that you're doing that you're not necessarily great at and the activities that don't give you energy, and look for people that it does. There are many, many people out there that have the soul juice, the soul service, that get animated coffee-free for doing work that you just are inspired by dread. And so just remember that there's plenty of people out there that have a personal gift to do the thing that you hate doing. And so you don't love everything. You don't have to love everything. The most important thing is knowing the most important thing. And your sweet spot is to concentrate on the superior skills that have a passion, the ones that you get energized by. You could do them all day long. You could never get tired. And so we want to draw a circle around those activities that you're doing now or the ones that you would love to be doing, and then taking everything else and building a support system around you professionally, personally, so that you're freeing yourself up, you're lightening your pack, you're simplifying, synthesizing, you're automating, you're delegating, or you're negating those things so that you have all those qualities, and the not to do are going to be growing, and doing things will be the things you're going to do. And then you're going to rely on other people with confidence in their competency, authorizing them in their own level of competence, developing them in their own level of competence, so that you more and more can rely on deep teamwork for people who can bring forth their personal gift. They can be more of themselves, and you can depend on them without having to train them up or change them. They have factory-made skills that you've selected them for. They have voluntary energy for the things you're talking about. And so it's developing that kind of support system by staying steadfast, by staying uber committed to your personal gift, by getting it out there so people can see the opportunity of you, harvest your creative freedom, and to live on purpose. And so when you occupy that domain of self-efficacy and you bring other people into their own, you develop an incredible level of confidence by both of you living in inspired work. And there's nothing more than that, than getting stuff done that way. You know, that it's not about forced work, it's about inspired work. Not every position in your company is going to be inspired work for everybody, but at least 50 to 60% or more could be. And if you did, you would not have to manage tough. You could hire smart. You could hire based on how much you admire in those people, seeing their personal gift, and then housing that personal gift in the work, the scope of work that they do. So work becomes very exciting when that's the case, because we do this. I know when I saw it first, there was a great worker on my team. She was in the front desk. Her name was Marie. And she one afternoon was looking for something more to do. And I said, well, why don't you edit our videos? Because we do these video podcasts. And so she didn't know how to do it, so I gave it to her. And I said, well, let me know how it goes for you. She sends me this unbelievable video. It's edited beautifully, unlike any other one. And I told her, great job. Oh, this is outstanding. How did you do it? And she told me, and so forth. And I knew when she told me that she had a great level of interest. She was so passionate about doing this that I was in the realm of greatness, that she really, truly was born to do this. She's so good at it. And so the next week, it was really cute. She came to my door and said, hey, JD, can I do those videos again? Now look at that. I didn't even have to ask for it. She's eager to ask me if she can do the work. It didn't feel like work to her. And today, she's the best in the world at it. And so we're always looking for ways to unblock any barriers to getting her released into her unique ability, getting her to produce that performance, that kind of personal gift. And 80% of it is just voluntary, 20% is finesse and skill, and she's always looking for better ways, better applications. But Marie is working from the domain of her personal gift, and I don't have to manage her. And all day long, she's interested, she's passionate, she's self-developing her own ability, tuning herself to the own tune of what she wants to create with it. It's just tremendous. What a great work product. It starts by being admired, it starts by admiring something in them, but it also starts by honoring your personal gift. That you take everything outside of it, and the purpose of delegating is to bring people into their personal gift, help get them the creative freedom for them to rise and grow into their full, authentic, and essential self, because that's their greatest source of pleasure and involvement. They get in 10. Involvement to enjoyment, in 10. So they get access to In10 as well. So that's creative freedom. Creative freedom is your quality of being in the world out of which you create. It's living in a creative orientation, and that you are suspending these three inner enemies so you get access to the creative act. And then at the same time, you're focusing on what it is that you really want to do. And to do that, you have to build this supporting team around you that is so supportive of you that everything they're doing is bringing them closer to their personal gift. And then from there, your confidence just continues to increase. Your freedom continues to increase. Your impact on the world continues to increase. So what's number two? Well, number two is your capacity to create value. You see, you're an entrepreneur, you're in an organization, you're in any relationship. The game is about creating value for another person. And so creative value has to do with tuning into a transformative conversation that you have. And see, you're living in the lanes of a law of spiritual economics called E equals what makes a difference times what matters. That the game is about energy management. And in order for you to animate yourself with this kind of loving and natural energy, this sense of aliveness, tapping into this source is about you cultivating the energy by doing things that make a difference times what matters. So it begs a couple of questions, right? It causes you to bear witness to the bigger questions of what is it that's really going on with the people around me, my customer? Or what is it that's really going on with my team and what they're standing in need of help for? Or what is it that's going on at home and my children? Or what is it that's going on with my significant other? And how are they needing me to come in to helping them? That you're here to enhance, to augment. You're not to interfere with their life, but you're here to enhance it. And so by virtue of that, there's a listening quality. If you want to know what John Smith buys, you have to look through John Smith's eyes. If you want to know how to meet the emotional needs of your spouse, you have to listen to what those are, how they feel they're important to you. When you do these things, they feel very important. They continue to feel romantic. When we neglect people, when we negate love, when we do not respect them and their needs, we cause people to trespass against us. It's when we understand people and we make them feel listened to, that they feel validated. Because people don't care what you know until they know you care. That's amen, right? We all kind of have a sense of that when we feel cared for, we want to know what they know. So you're in the business of selling. If you're selling anything, you're providing a product or service, creating value for them, you probably overlook the fact that the conversation itself is what you really sell. I had a situation recently where a salesperson was talking to Ben, and Ben is buying a product or service in IT. But after the conversation, Ben says to the seller, the conversation was the first time he ever really had a chance to think about his problem, think about his future, think about what he had to do to change it. He never does that. But by asking the right questions, by coming from a place of giving value for the joy of it, Doug could become more essential to Ben. But Doug tended to overlook it, right? He thought, well, it's the product or the service. But sometimes it's getting people to think about the problems in new ways instead of the way we solve it. Because isolation is out there in the world. More and more people are feeling isolated because of microtechnology. There's great confusion and complexity out there in the world. We all have this war going on with stuff. Our emotional intimacy is going out the door. We're feeling more and more helpless, and we're feeling more and more frustrated with the life that's here. All of us at some level feel we're disconnected. Disconnected to life, disconnected to others, disconnected to world, disconnected to whole, disconnected to earth. And we're experiencing soul loss. So how do we bring this transaction? How do we bring commerce? How do we bring spirituality and commerce together so that it increases our prosperity levels? That prosperity, true prosperity, is that the profits of our company is truly the oxygenation of our purpose. And that if we combine planet, purpose, and profits, where we have other bottom lines, we can bring the humanity back to the performance environment of our business. Right? It's not about expertise. People don't want experts in the world. What they want is they want your humanity. They don't want your expertise. I know that's true because if you sit by anyone for long enough and you just listen to them and you let them be legitimate in whatever they are, they're changed. They're changed by your acceptance. They're changed by what's called respect. which is not reducing them into an object, a buyer. The minute you label them, the minute you call them a category, the minute you put them into some kind of file, you've objectified them. You've reduced them. But if you respect, it means that you're listening to them as human beings. They're walking personal gifts. They have something to do in the world. They have something that the world needs to see in the opportunity of them, and maybe you could be a supply line that would help open the access point to the world seeing it. Imagine playing that kind of role, where your conversation becomes the gateway for the world getting what it belongs, what is emergent, what is ready to be given to the world in the other. Am I saying you should save the world? I'm not. That's a big responsibility. You'd have your hands full. Why try? But don't miss the subtleties. That just by changing one life, you're changing a lot of things that you might forget. It only takes a few people to really make some significant changes. And it's more about the inner place from which you're coming from than what results or how you're going to go about it. It's an organic nature of just giving and receiving love, of being there for others. That most of what selling is about is really helping someone. And the biggest part of helping is the desire to sincerely help. And that means giving someone something that they truly need and want, not something that we want for them. It's serving them. It's a giver mentality rather than a taker mentality. It's connecting with that basic goodness that we just talked about in Creative Freedom. It's what you get when you unleash it. Because if you understand markets better, you understand the other better, you become someone more essential. And the one who's more essential wins the match. Business is about four things. It's about customer benefits. It's about the owner's benefits. It's about the worker's benefits. And it's about the society's benefits. If you cut off one of those bottom lines, you sever the whole thing. You've seen businesses that don't serve society. They're not sustainable. They don't last. You've seen businesses that don't take good care of their workers. They don't last. High turnover. You've seen businesses that exhaust the owner and down his enthusiasm. Doesn't last. Biggest killer of a business is the owner's level of enthusiasm fades away. Or it doesn't create value for the customer. You get the idea that in order for you to have an honest, fortified, sustainable business, it's not about money. The money's the booby prize, right? We think that money is just going to be helping us do it, but people in your company don't talk about profit on the drive home. They talk about the nobility of your guiding ideas. They talk about why it's worth it, why they don't want to leave their peers in a crisis, why they don't want to leave because they feel faithful to the people that are there, because they're held together by something. They're held together by a common cause, a mission, a connection, something that bonds them, because workplace is life place. There's no difference. We're spending more time at work than we spend in our own lives. It's true. You spend more hours at your work than you do with your marriage. So you don't have to be a different person, right? These are soulful people in a workplace. You're an entrepreneur in a soulful person that's creating value for a marketplace. You're listening. You're finding solutions. So you're not there to just provide a product or a service. You're truly there to create a community within these social systems that allow you to plug in on an ongoing adaptive learning mentality so that you're relevant, what it is that is emergent that you can factor into your innovation, optimize your processes to continually innovate at a higher quality level, develop a brand, develop confidence, but you're highly adaptive. You never stop learning. So learning is creating value. Comprehension is what equals value. How well do you listen to and understand your customer, right? And do they bring you into your best work? Are you operating in your sweet spot? Are you able to do it with some financial profits, not just above board? And this is called financial freedom, right? Relating with your internal team, relating with your external customer, relating with society, right? Being able to relate, get access to relating because the business does something for you. As the owner, it brings you happy, it brings you meaning, it brings you access to create purpose, access to fulfill your dreams. Yes, all that. But then there's growth. Then there's financial freedom, and there's the business itself. There's business mastery. Do you own a job or do you own a business? Does the business master you, or do you really own a business? There's a creator and a creation. You have a customer. Are they the right customers? Are you watering weeds? Your customers will cause you all sorts of complexity, especially if you keep the wrong ones around. So working with the right customers means you're working on the ones that are going to take you to your future, the ones that bring out your creative freedom, the ones that deliver you into creative value, to be an innovator, that help you get them what they want. But you have to design a system. That's right, there has to be order to it. Because you can't have chaos in a business. You got people working together. There has to be clear lines of communication. You have goals. You have macro goals, micro goals. You have impact areas and activities that need to be done to meet those goals and timeframes. You have roles and responsibilities that need to be dialed in with performance objectives. You have hiring. You have firing. So your job as the leader is to set the direction, build a unified team, right? Market that business within the budget so that you don't overspend, and maintain a good balance sheet to bring it efficient. Make sure you can make profits over the amount of sales that you create. Make sure that the assets are right size fit in your company with the right size people doing the right things right. Management. And making sure that you got the right metrics and reports and reporting vehicles for feedback to respond to small problems before they become big ones, and create statistics that you can live by. This is the financial freedom. Your business is a cash flow machine. Making obscene profit is a very, very good thing. But how you deliver that business is putting creative freedom and creative value together in the impact of creating a business that continues to multiply and repeat itself, where you can grow through offspring and reproduction and succession, where you have people in your organization that can produce at the same or better level than you, that you develop those gifts in the others to run with things, to solve problems, to face them, to bring solutions, and empower them by investing in people and developing an ownership attitude, not an entitlement attitude, but bringing people closer to themselves by providing them the leadership, the management, the enforcement, the supervision to integrate what your marketing channel is trying to do, growth, to your management channel, which is operations, standardization, making sure that you've got quality control on things, to the financial dimension for effectiveness, efficiency, and productivity. Those are the three biggies on your health card. And also your customer service, sales, customer repetition, frequency of repurchase. So you can increase your customer base, you can increase your average transaction size per customer, you can increase the frequency of repurchase per customer. Those are the three ways to grow it. So constructing a clear growth plan, then a customer plan on how you're going to generate, qualify, and convert the right customers and keep them and retain them. And also multiply them by favorable introductions and referrals and positive feedback. And then the financial dimension of having your house in order there so that you're financially a sustainable business that can oxygenate the purpose. And of course, you've got to be able to standardize your systems and controls so things are documented into manuals, measured, role descriptions are clear. People know where to be and what to do, who does what by when, WWW. So that within the time frames, within 90 days, 180 days, there is a great design of a vision, a strategic vision on how we're going to get it, clear goals that break down the manner in which we're going to prioritize how we're going to get it, people doing the right activities and the roles that they do, and measured in the meetings that you guys do that are informational as well as developmental, so you can learn from things that work and also learn from things that do and reinforce them. So you become a learning organization. You never stop learning. You have a shared vision out of which you orient yourselves to create. Everybody's held together by that, but also personal mastery of having individual vision in the organization for life and business. And also they have to be able to establish their protocols for creative freedom, working with some of those mentalities we talked about, where innovation can happen by unblocking dangerous mental models or historic ways of thinking. In an organization, reflection is the only antidote to changing our history. If we don't make time and place to plan and be the strategist, we're not going to change the future. And so how do we do that? Well, we just do. We have to prioritize a time and a place to work on the business so that what we do in the business will change. And that means consistently firing ourselves from every position on the org chart, doing the thing that we were meant to do in the role that we're really best at doing, the one that we're enjoyably able to do, and also maximize our personal production. So this is the financial freedom piece. But what about creative purpose? To kind of tie it all together, we have this thing called the present moment. We're going through life, right? Life is in the business of creating life. We have to be, create, relate, and earn, and do this in parallel with integration. So there is a sense of fulfillment and balance, that we're trending, and we're trending with high-level performance in all four, that our quality of being is there, that is complementary to our quality of what our creations are, that out of which that being we do things. And that out of that, we also incorporate our capacity to relate, inbound and outbound, with energy and flow patterns of information, out of which we can construct plans and creations, and construct creative acts as a team. And then we have financial freedom, which is our means, which is the profit means to continue to flourish as an organization, organized organization, and as a community, a workplace, which is a place where people develop personal development, professional development, as they get things done, that are their aspirations. So today's organization is about bringing the humanity back to the workplace. It's about being real. It's about having all the bottom lines in the workplace, not just profit, but that there are other bottom lines that are emotional, spiritual, mental, and physical. That we avoid the energy crisis that's happening in organizations today with compliance and coercion-driven organizations, and replace those with horizontal organizations that are relational and that represent the real relationships we have in life, because life is worth cherishing. And that's why I call this creative purpose. Because to live on purpose is to have some greater sense of being connected to something bigger than you, of finding that place to take in the world. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to sound in vogue. You don't have to convince everybody that you have a mission because you're afraid to be naked without one. None of that. This is a sense. It's a felt sense that as you've come from being somebody, that now you're okay with not being somebody, that now you really can listen. All the channels start to open. You start to receive. You begin to sense things in the world that are outside what you're needing other people to see about you. Instead of being afraid of being disapproved, you're preoccupied less with power and inadequacy. You come to terms with your kryptonite. You're a human being. You're being human, right? That's what a human being is being human, being incomplete, being a learner, being somebody that isn't quite perfect. It's true. Homo sapien means one who knows. One who knows. One who knows. Who's the one who knows? And there's a lot of other ways of knowing than something empirical, than measuring it. We come to know things through other, as I've just described in Creative Freedom, organs of perception. We come to know things through other levels of comprehension that animate us, emotionally, intellectually, and spiritually. We learn things through our bodies. We learn things through our heads, and we learn things through our hearts. Those are organs of perception. Like a musician that plays a great hall, they play from the grand hall. They play from the space itself. They integrate it into the manner in which they play. They play it from there. Or the tennis player who plays it from the other side of the court, who plays it from the entire game in the stadium and the crowd, and the integration of the emerging whole that comes into their manner of play and their delivery and their intensity and their pace. You were born with love. You were not born with pain. You were not born with hate. You were not born with negativity. When you came into the world in your purity, you were purely without any of that, an innocent, virgin, loving being, housed in you as a soulful person. And by virtue of that, you have an eye behind the eye that is in a constant flow without memory of timeless animation. It's not in the time, it's not in the mental construct of time to avoid being controlled by the world like we have a watch on our hand or the time on the clock. It's the time of the kairos, the time of the opportunity, the time of the season, the time of the awakening. And that it is my hope that something in you, a seed, is ready to begin that journey into a creative purpose, of sensing a future pull, and that out of watching the world around you, of what you see going on, and staying long enough until you take delivery of that pull, like the artist who sits on the cliff and senses what's there in the environment, and the environment speaks to him, or the scientist that stays with the data long enough to have a sense of what their emerging future self needs to do to create the cure for cancer, or the leader in the world who senses as she's looking at the school system and senses as an educational entrepreneur what's in the kids and potentially able to come out. And she's informed. We all can take inspiration by the observations that we make, and that we can presense emerging future possibilities if we can let go and let come what's ready to crystallize. Sometimes it knocks, sometimes it just hammers, and we just can't not hear it. In fact, it follows us around all the time. The musician who says, I couldn't not play that type of music because no matter how I tried to conform to my methods, it was really what I needed to do. Life has an implicit meta-curriculum in it. It's the one who says, I'm going to go do this work. They go there and they meet something completely different and unexpected that was ready. The only way they would know is to connect the dots behind them and to trust life, to trust that everything the future needs is given to you in this moment. So when we combine our sense of creative purpose, of really being in the world and the world is in us, and operating from our deepest sources of knowing, of letting the future unfold as we walk, and that out of that we occupy our sense, our heartfelt sense, our wholeheartedness of understanding the other, and through our comprehension animating plans and creative acts. And by developing a brilliant and sustainably ordered business that is able to make money without you, so you own a business, not a job, a fantastic enterprise that provides the social responsibility, the customer responsibility. It provides you a terrific life and a lifestyle and a retirement and access to your personal gifts. It brings you wholeheartedly into a better person. And it also brings the human beings, the internal customers, the staff into that too. This is possible. This is what I'm suggesting that we set forth on our road trip. This is what the coaching relationship is geared towards. This journey. So if you don't do that, what do you miss out on? What about the creative freedom? Being, creating, relating, and earning. That prosperity is equal to how spirituality and commerce can work together in common cause. And so I invite you on this journey into creative freedom, financial freedom, creative purpose, and creative value. And that within each of these, we have modules that are sort of strategic approaches and tactics and tools that will help drive your performance, your capacity to integrating all four of these. So welcome to High Level Performance. It is an honor to move you further, farther, faster than you ever could on your own through the possibilities, a runway, a launching pad of the coaching relationship. So I am the VIP coach, and I look forward to working together.